and action. Welcome to it. Welcome to Series 3 of Whisky Unscripted. Gordon and Das, how are you?
It's like Netflix. People will be waiting to binge listen and binge watch now, potentially. Whisky Unscripted Season 3 is here. We're very excited. How are you?
Very well, Gordon. I am still in what's called the sauna, and you are right. Previously, Series 1 and 2 we've recorded on an audio format, but we felt that we wanted to see each other, and maybe people wanted to see a little bit of us. So we're recording this on Zoom. Have you ever heard of that platform?
No, it's not something I'm particularly familiar with. Or this Teams that people talk about. But I'm surprised that, I think not many people want to see more of us, but hey, you're getting to see more of us. So we just think obviously doing it on Zoom or something like that, and we'll you'll still be able to listen to it as normal, but you can also watch it, and it'll be on all of our channels: Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. We've got channels coming out of our ears.
That's right. So just if you're listening to this right now, you'll realise that my phone's gone. So people are watching this live.
This is live. Who is it? Why is your camera gone all funny?
I have got a
very fancy camera, which.
That's what I like, Gordon. Yes, you've got a fancy camera which follows you around the room. So when your phone goes, the camera follows you. So if you stand up, so if you're listening to this on a podcast, this will mean nothing to you. But if you're watching it on YouTube, it follows you around the room. So we'll maybe do a little tour of the sauna. Well, this is, Gordon, hopefully, we are, and if you've never listened to this podcast before, from Ian MacLeod Distillers, we are producers of whiskey. We're not people that are fans. Well, we are fans of whiskey, but we actually work for a company.
I mean, what's interesting about that, again, if you were watching, is if you can see behind Gordon, there's a selection of products that we produce. We're producers. And I think that's what makes us a little bit different, is we can do insider's guides. We can bring you a little bit of a different way in terms of how we sell our whiskey, how we make our whiskey, how we market our whiskey. And also we want to be inclusive in the industry. As you can tell from the other seasons and the other episodes, we've always talked to the wider industry as well.
That's right. And part of the job that we do is bringing the stories to life. And I managed to persuade the powers that be to give me a fancy camera that follows you around the room. So we are talking about the stories and talking about the history of Tamdhu or the history of Glengoyne. You can be standing up and moving your hands around, and the camera follows you, and you can share the screen with all fancy images. So that's why, Gordon, as well, we want to try and bring some of our stories to life from our brands. But this is Whisky Unscripted, so we talk about all brands.
Absolutely.
On that point, Gordon, we can't start the show without asking, what are you tasting?
Well, couple of exciting things. Because I was fairly involved with it, and it's something which I'm very excited about. I purchased a whiskey over Christmas, which was a Rosebank 30. I'm very excited. I'm a proud owner of a Rosebank. I'm very happy about that, because it's certainly something which, it's a great whiskey. It's a great distillery. We started rebuilding this week, and Rosebank is on its way back, which is great. But I'm not going to drink that. I'm keeping that because I've got some samples of it, so I don't need to drink that yet.
God, is that one of these bottles you say, do not touch the Rosebank? You wake up the next morning with your mates and the Rosebank's empty.
Well,
don't let that happen.
No, I'm going to put it in a locked cupboard, but I just want to actually show people who've maybe not seen this. So you unscrew this from the top.
Lovely.
I don't drop the bottle, Gordon. Do not drop the bottle.
Oh, I see.
There we are.
Oh, wow.
With beautiful etching on the top. So yeah, again, not so great if you're listening on the podcast, but a beautiful bottle, the Rosebank. And so that's something which that's a bit of an exciting whiskey purchase for me. I'm quite excited by that. But what I'm going to drink is my favorite. I thought I'd start off my this podcast with my favorite, which is the Glengoyne 18. I've said this for about a year. I'm loving Glengoyne 18 at the moment. This is the old pack, though, not the new design. So I've got to drink it so I can get a bottle of the new one.
Yes.
Still the same great whiskey, though, and you've got the new bottle there.
That's a new bottle there. So this is
really
why we're doing it on video. We're doing it in Zoom so people can zoom right into the new pack there. That's fully recyclable from recycled materials. Yep. Wonderful and great image. So that's great, Gordon. And what I love about that Rosebank, I've never really seen that. It's almost like a podium the bottle stands on.
It's beautiful. It's really beautiful. And it's been so popular. It's sold out everywhere. So we're very excited about that. So we're now in early February. You're having a Tamdhu. But which one's that? Batch strength 4,
batch
5?
5, 59.8, batch 5. So
59.8. Bing, bang, boom.
At the end of a long day, this really is and for January, for February, this is custom made for our climate. And that's why I suppose it comes from Scotland, Gordon, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And for those who are not based in Scotland, we've actually had really, really cold weather for about a month since Boxing Day, really. And this is all down to this cold sitting over sort of Scandinavia. And it's just keeping all of these lows that normally come in and give us grief here. So it's been really cold, which is perfect for Tamdhu and sherry cask whiskey.
Sherry, I just love that warm. I love the finish on it. It's just really very warming and so mouth-coating. Absolutely fabulous. And I've got a little special as well, Gordon, that I might have later on. I want you to guess. Fantastic. Very, very special. Just thought for the first episode, I've been keeping this for a while. It's a 34-year-old whiskey.
34 years old.
Sorry, my glasses went on. 36 years old.
Oh, right. We'll talk about that later. Right. I'm excited by that.
Special later on. So, Gordon, every time we start these Whisky Unscripted podcasts, we sort of task you to look at the news. But we stopped in mid-December. So there's, you've got about a month and a half that we have missed since Series 2. So I don't know if you can encapsulate a couple of months worth.
Well, I mean, news is fairly, funnily enough, actually, when you come over that period of Christmas and New Year, there's not actually a lot of new products. There's not actually a lot of whiskey news because it generally gets to the point in sort of early December that you're really wanting to get the sales teams and your distributors just to focus on selling. We know that Christmas and that run-up period has been very odd this year and very different and, challenging for a lot of people, but it's the period that when we sell a lot of whiskey, you probably sell, in the last 4 months of the year, you sell over 50% of your whiskey, probably. And so it's a really sort of important period of time. So there's not many releases happen in December. But I mean, some of the big news, obviously, we're still in a pandemic where the distillery is closed. At Glengoyne. And the other thing is, and this is the thing that I'm still struggling to understand is, and I saw an article on it last week or early this week, was that, the Scotch whisky industry's lost $500 million or pounds of revenue from tariffs in the US. Yeah. And I'm still bemused why the EU and America cannot come to an agreement that this should just be forgotten about in the context of what is going on in the world. This really is unbelievable. Yes. And when you have a pandemic and you have economic hardship and you have economic issues and you have tariffs, which are man-made and not anything but that, I'm just bemused by why it's the small guys, the whiskey guys that suffer for big industry, and I'm still bemused by this. If I thought they were going to be taken off, I don't understand why they're not taken off. It's affecting jobs in the US, it's affecting jobs in Scotland, it's affecting jobs all over the place, and it's not just Scotch whisky, there's a whole load of other things. So, I just find it unbelievable.
And of course,
however, that is
we're taxing the bourbon industry as well, so it's like
exactly. So
we're both cancelling each other out.
Well, pretty much, it's just bonkers, and I just don't understand it. I'm really bemused by the whole thing. So, we hopefully a new president may change something.
Correct. And to lighten things up, Gordon, I did see that just as we come off Series 2, just before Christmas, I think one of your favourite places or places of choice, Kilhoman, I saw past 15 years of production. And you think it's been there for a long time. When people look at it, it just seems to have always been there, but 15 years.
Unbelievable. And, I think what's amazing is that, it really is for me. And I think even if you spoke to Anthony Wills, who's been running it and done such an amazing job for probably more than 15 years, if we're honest. They've had to build bits as they go, but they did it right. They got really good people involved. They understood what they were trying to create. They've got a really good range, and it's a tasty, tasty whiskey, and they're great people. So, I think I've said this before. Someone who I hugely respected in Ireland, John McClellan, used to work for them, ex-Bunnahabhain, and just unfortunately he's not with us anymore. But he really was instrumental, as was other people feeding into what you're trying to create, and they've done it really, really well as a blueprint of how you would successfully want your distillery to be after 15 years. It's a prime example of that. And I think, if I'm honest, there's so many new distilleries in Scotland over the last 3, 4, 5 years that a lot of them have got to get it right. And a lot of them have, there's some really interesting challenges for people coming forward with what's going on. And we know the nature of how Scotch whiskey is made and how it's sort of money heavy at the front and then the returns come over time. So it'll be interesting to see how that develops, not just in Scotland, but around the world, because there's been such an explosion of distilleries, which is great. But unfortunately, history says they're not all going to survive. And that's just the nature of the beast.
That's amazing, because I was looking at some of the whiskey shops just to get some inspiration. I saw Ardnamurchan, who we spoke to. Bruce Finlay, was it, earlier in the...
Alex Bruce.
Bruce Finlay was a DJ. Alex Bruce. And I saw... it sold out in a couple of the shops, so they've done very well.
They've done really well. And there's other people. Isle of Raasay launched their whiskey, which I think's been hugely popular. And again, really, really, great story of the Isle of Raasay, and there's other whiskies that will be coming this year. So exciting time for sure.
And another piece of news that I noticed, Gordon, was, and I was very heartened by it, was the sheer volume of Burns activities on the internet. Now, we've done a couple of the Burns nights down south, London and all over the country, and I thought that was it. That's a shame. It's not going to happen this year, but my goodness, did you see all the events?
There was lots
online.
There was lots, and I saw a few, and I sort of dialed in briefly to one, and we did a really nice one actually with Smokehead, where Mikey, our colleague, did, and we discussed this back in sort of November, and we decided Smokehead, a brand that's very different, should do a different Burns night. So 3 Smokeheads were sent out with a packet of haggis crisps, haggis chocolate, and some seaweed sort of rolls that we would use for sushi. Really, really different. Got people engaged in a different way, and very Smokehead, So it's great. Really, really good. What are you writing down there, Gordon? What are you writing down?
Well, you mentioned Mikey Sim, and you mentioned that we've talked about Christmas, so I'm just writing down, get Mikey some socks for next Christmas.
Oh, right, yeah.
That's his wee Christmas list. That's it.
Yeah. No, absolutely.
You've got to have these insider jokes sometimes.
Absolutely.
Gordon, the other bit of news that we bring is that we started a Facebook, Whisky Unscripted Facebook page.
We did. We were on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on YouTube. We're on. We're not on TikTok, are we? Are we on TikTok?
Answering, I'm not got the rhythm. But we're on Facebook, so I've asked you if you wouldn't mind going to the Whisky Unscripted Facebook page. If you're listening to this, please go along and give us a like, join the page. I'm just trying to fill it with content. And we do like a challenge. I thought I'd just give you a quick challenge, Gordon. I know you haven't done this, but if you go right down to the beginning, you might see a crossword.
Right down to the beginning. Hold on.
Yep.
Right. So a wee bit further down. Oh, yeah. Oh, look at this.
Okay, so I've got a little crossword here, and I suppose if you're going to listen to the podcast, I'm going to give you the answers, but it's all to do with whiskey terms. Now, two across, Hawkeye and Hot Lips are in this.
Hawkeye. Is it cryptic?
Not really.
Hawkeye.
It's a whiskey term, 4 letters. Hawkeye and Hot Lips. Hot Lips Houlihan. Do you remember her from this long-running television series? And Hawkeye was a doctor. Set in the Korean War. Medical MASH. So there we go. There's MASH is 2 across. Pick anyone, Gordon. Pick anyone.
Breathe easy with Mr. Doig's invention.
That's 10 letters. Breathe easy with Mr. Doig's invention.
Pagoda.
It's another word for that. The Doig, the next one. They're in the news in ICU wards all over the world.
Ventilator.
Correct. The Doig ventilator is another word for the pagoda chimney. Mr. Charles Doig, who designed the Chinese, inspired by the Chinese pagoda, first seen in Dalhousie in 1889. He also designed Tamdhu, Mr. Charles Doig. And we may have a discussion about one of the greats of the Scottish whisky industry. So that was 6 across. Give us another one, Gordon.
No clothes to buy in this one.
That's right. You have to have a knowledge of high street fashion retail outlets.
Right.
It also is a whisky term. And it is 9 letters. If you're listening to this, no clothes to buy in this one. So it's a shop then that you'll buy clothes in. But it's also the name of a whisky term. I'm not too sure you might get this one, Gordon. If I said you could have a dunnage before this word.
Oh, warehouse.
Yes.
Yeah.
You ever
Nice.
shop in warehouse, Gordon? Did you ever?
No, it's not. It's not a place I'm shopping very much. No.
If you're not listening to this in the UK, warehouse is a chain of female fashion shops. Warehouse. And give us the last one, and before we go to the next challenge.
Okay. His Bible had us moonwalking. Oh. I know that one. Michael Jackson.
yes. And that, of course, leads in, I suppose, nicely to Whisky Day, which I believe was on, is it International Whisky Day? And then there's malt whiskey. I never get When's
There
Michael
is
Jackson's
two.
birthday?
Yeah, end of March is International Whisky Day to celebrate Michael Jackson. And
That's
then
it.
there is World Whisky Day. You
That's
can't have
right.
enough whisky days, to be honest, which
Oh, that's
originally was started by Blair Bowman. And that's in May, I think.
That's right.
And it's, every day should be World Whisky Day.
So that's great. My last one with this crossword, and please, if you've not joined, I just love he says, 11 down, Gordon, look for this in the pudding. A whisky term. What is in the pudding? Something is in the pudding.
Oh, there's a phrase. What is it?
Yes, there's a phrase. It's
what is
something
it?
to do with the alcoholic content.
I can't remember. What is it?
Alliteration. It starts with the letter P. The
Proof.
yes. The proof is in the pudding. So there's a little cryptic crosswords, and that's one of the first entries on our Facebook page. And the last challenge I want to set you, Gordon, you posted this on your Facebook timeline about your love of Tayto crisps.
I did. Yeah, that's true.
I love a crisp. I love a crisp.
They are the best crisps in the world. If you're not familiar with Tayto crisps, they were sent to me by a friend of mine. Thank you, Susanna. They're just the best crisps. They're better than any crisps you get in the UK. They are from Ireland. If you ever go to Ireland, eat Tayto crisps. They are simply fabulous.
Is that right? I've never had a Tayto crisp, and I was just looking at it, and I love what people do. They're called Tayto. If you go to our Facebook page, you'll see they're spelled Tayto. Tayto. So it's a phonetic spelling of the last few letters of the word potato. If you see what they've done, they've taken the last few letters of potato and just made their own spelling, but it still sounds the same as potato, Tayto. So I've done the same with a whisky distillery. I've taken the last few letters of a whisky distillery, made it sound the same, but spelt it different. Now, my distillery is called Layer, Layer. Layer. It's the phonetic sounding version of the last few letters of a distillery in Scotland.
Balblair.
Sure. Yes, he's got it. Yes, we had Giri come on and give us a comment. He got it wrong. He said Tomatin. So, well done, Gordon. Balblair, Layer is the last few letters of Balblair, and it's spelled differently from the way I've spelled it. I'm not too sure that quiz will catch on, but there
you never know. We can string that out, I'm sure. One thing I think, seeing as we're now a little bit visual, and I think people really want to see a little bit of the sauna. So can you take us, and it's not going to take long, can you give us a tour of the sauna?
The sauna's really, really quite small, but just because I'm very, very small, it looks big. Yeah. But yes, indeed. And with this new camera, I can just stand up and it should follow us at the back. If you come across here, at the very back is the fount of knowledge, is some of the books that I've been reading. One of the good books I love, it's just a bit difficult to see here, so bright in the sauna, is The Whisky Barons.
Ah, yes.
Which is a great book about some of the great Victorian entrepreneurs. So that's the books there. And then there's a bit of new shelving going on, Gordon. Nice. I had previous shelving with the Glengoyne. I put a bit of shelving here last week, and we've got this at Tamdhu. We've got some lovely smoke heads moving into some more Glengoynes, lovely legacy, and then finishing in that Tamdhu Edinburgh Airport edition at the end there,
stunning.
Which is stunning. This is a 46-inch television. I put some tartan over it for my burns.
Nice.
Tartan travel run.
You got a suitcase there in case you're going travelling?
Well, very quickly, this suitcase, by the way, maybe you'll not see it, but there's a television programme next Tuesday night, and it features John Lumley, and in the suitcase is the clothes that Joanna put on. Whether or not it makes it to the cut, I don't want to say, but she dresses up as a smuggling lady, smuggling the moonshine that we made on the Campsie Hills behind Glengoyne, smuggling them beneath a skirt. And this is the Victorian walking skirt that I just happen to have a copy of, and you put the smuggling pouches under this kilt.
Looking good with that on.
Thank you very much. And we'll have a little shawl which is kicking about here, and the little shawl goes on your head to indicate you are indeed a lady, and you go off into the night with your pouch under your skirt. And
can I just say to those who are listening to this and not watching it, you're in a much better place. Very interesting. And that is the sauna. That is the famous sauna. You've even got a dartboard. Brilliant.
I've got a dartboard, and I've got I used to like a bit of 20th century art. I've got a bit of a Rothko there going on for those that know Mark Rothko. And yes, I've got a lovely dartboard, which theoretically you could actually put over the Mark Rothko and throw at and maybe make it more valuable if I was a modern artist, but I'm not.
Fantastic.
So that's little books, whiskey, and some clothes to dress up in. What more do you need, Gordon?
Absolutely.
Now, Gordon, Whisky Unscripted, just wanted to get a few extra features for Series 3. We've got lots of guests lined up, lots of insiders guests. We want to, as producers, get into under the fingernails of the industry.
Yeah.
I wanted to get a little feature going. We did the A to Z's last 2 seasons. I love the history, and I just thought it would be quite nice to look at the history of whiskey through not letters of the alphabet, but actually through physical objects. And I thought every week one of us could bring an object to the camera, and the other person's got to tell me whether it's going to get through to make it to the final list into the Museum of Whiskey exhibits. Could I go first?
Yes, you can go first.
The history of whiskey in, let's call it 10 objects. We'll do 10 episodes. I'm going to ask if I could put my tartan trews into the exhibition. You might want to ask me why.
Why?
Well, Gordon, when you start as a tour guide in Glengoyne, and it really just symbolises the tourist industry at the moment with whiskey, you get a pair of tartan trousers. And these are my pair of tartan trousers I got to become a tour guide at Glengoyne. And I just thought it would be a lovely exhibit to quantify and discuss how important whiskey tourism has become to the industry of whiskey. And looking at some of the facts of the Scottish Whisky Association, they've got the figures for 2019, but 2.2 million people came to visit Scottish whisky distilleries. That's the latest figures.
That's incredible. it's a shame it wasn't like that last year.
Yeah,
But no, I agree. I think whiskey tourism has become such a big thing now, and we hope it rebounds very strongly, generally. But last year has been really difficult. But I completely agree. I think it's something which I think the industry has done really well. Historically, if you look at where people came from and came to Scotland, a lot of it was to do with sightseeing, generally golf, a whole load of other reasons. Now people come specifically for whiskey, which they didn't do 10, 15 years ago. And that's a really, really big thing. And things like Facial, which unfortunately is cancelled, Spirit of Speyside Whiskey Festival, which again is going virtual but is postponed this year. These have been instrumental in delivering a much more a brilliant experience for people coming to Scotland. So
I would say that's the next level, isn't it, Gordon? I've got a lovely picture. You can go and search it. Glenfiddich, 1969, the first visitor centre opened up, and just really exponentially grown from there. And as you say, the festivals now are that's the next level up. From visiting a distillery, you can now come for a whole weekend with like-minded people and enjoy music, food, and whiskey. It's just fantastic if you can get the right weather, and get the right whiskey.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I would agree, definitely.
So that is the first, and I should just say that, I've got a list that's not the comprehensive list here, but roughly some of the top performing distilleries for tourists, just in sheer numbers: Arran, Glengoyne, Harris, Blair Athol, Glenturret, Glenfiddich, Talisker, Edgewater, Dalwhinnie, and Oban, roughly in the top 10. Not an official top 10, but that's as near as damn as I could get it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in 2019, Arran was like the most visited distillery. Blair Athol, very high. Glengoyne is very high too. So, I think they're like the top 3. So it's huge industry. And, it's let's just hope it rebounds with a gusto and everybody can travel again.
And one of the last points on the whiskey tourism, reading a few things, and this industry has been categorised with booms and busts. And you'll never stop a big bust, but one of the positives is they've never had this level of whiskey tourism surrounding the industry. So if the worst does happen, a lot of these businesses and a lot of whiskey can still navigate their way through choppier times because of the tourism around the actual liquid.
Definitely.
So that's very good. So can my trousers go in?
They are in. They're in already.
Whiskey? Excellent.
They're in the Hall of Fame. Speaking of Hall of Fames, actually,
yes.
I was listening to the Whisky Magazine's awards, the Icons of Whisky Awards that we did for the US last night, and there was some very interesting winners. Whisky Magazine has had a Hall of Fame for about 15 years, and there's only 60-odd members, of which Peter Russell, who obviously is from Ian MacLeod Distillers, is a member, and there's other Richard Patterson, people like that. But last night's inductee from the US was Fred No. Fred No is a good friend of mine, master distiller at Jim Beam, and really, really, really happy to see him inducted into the Hall of Fame, which was fantastic. So well done, Fred.
Well done. I'll induct you into Hall of Fame, Gordon. I'm going to go into my feature. Another feature will be unrolling over the next few weeks. But could you guess this little precious whiskey that I've got in my hand? Tiny it is. I've been wanting to crack it open for quite a number of times.
Right. Well, you need to sort of taste it and explain it a little bit. You need to give me a chance.
Okay. So I'm going to hold it up to the camera. Quite light. Okay. Right. For a 36-year-old, it's
36-year-old, probably in a refill cask, but we'll have a guess at that. Okay. Interesting.
You can ask me some questions as I have a little sip.
Does it have a strength?
That's a very good point.
It doesn't matter. I'm just wondering.
No, not on the little bottle. I've got some notes back there, I think.
Okay. Right. So what does it taste of? Obviously, grain whiskey is really, really good, but they're made from a spirit which has, generally a lot less flavour than a malt spirit.
So, Gordon, you went automatically for a grain?
No, I'm not talking about that at all. I'm just saying it could be a grain. It could be a refill bourbon. It could be a range of different products. But I mean, 36 years old with that colour, to me, and I don't know. You need to give me a little bit of a taste, but it's either going to be a refill single malt. I don't even know if it's peated or anything, or it could be a single grain. It could be a blend, I guess, but it could be anything. But just keen to know what it is.
I'm going to. You've said it already, and you're actually onto it straight away. So go with your instincts.
Well, that was
Amazing.
a complete guess. I was just talking about it. But, okay.
A grain whiskey.
It's a single grain. Okay.
Single
grain.
grain.
You don't see a lot of single grains. There's not that many single grain distilleries around.
And the reason I love this is because I love it's a lovely floral nature to it, but I love the backstory for this distillery. It's one of the oldest grain distilleries in Scotland, and I think it's this. I know it's the place in Scotland where the first continual column still was used 1826 onwards. They're doing continual column distillation in this place north of the Forth. I believe it's the biggest in Scotland, if not
north of the Forth.
Yes.
Okay, that doesn't narrow it. That takes out a few.
Yeah.
That takes out something. That probably takes out something like Girvan.
Go on.
Loch Lomond, probably.
On. Yes. Yep. Go on. And I should say, not too far.
Probably.
Yeah, Starlaw, it's gone as well.
I'm not sure.
I should say, not too far north of the Forth. And the Forth, if you're listening, is that river just north of Edinburgh as you head into the Kingdom of Fife. And that's the route we're heading up.
Oh, so it's the oldest one, is it?
Yeah. And I was going to say, as a little clue, it would be something, if I was doing a crossword puzzle, as we've done already, it'd be the director of Titanic crosses the Forth. James
Cameron Bridge.
Right,
very good. That's Diageo. It's in Fife, isn't it?
Correct. It's just outside Methil in Fife, which is the coast road that you're heading towards St Andrews, if you know your Scottish geography. And that's a 36-year-old Cameron Bridge single grain Scotch.
What's it taste like? What does it taste like?
I thought it was really smooth. Didn't get any peated notes from it, and a lovely. I thought I got a lot of floral, lovely grassy notes to it as well. I'd have to have another wee taste. I want to keep it back a little bit, but really silky smooth.
Yeah, and it's not, as I said earlier, grain whiskies are brilliant, and there's some really good ones out there, but they're not. They are a little bit more narrow in terms of their style generally, because they have generally been filled into refill sherry casks, bourbon casks, but not always.
We touched the Parma violets there, something very smooth. That's lovely. So that's just Cameron Bridge grain whiskey. I mean, you're right onto it straight away. Brilliant.
No, I wasn't. I mean, it was just by colour. I was going, that's refill. That could be grain, but that's just a colour thing. It was more luck, I think.
Gordon, we've got another, and this is almost like an introductory episode, because I want to get my teeth into this little section. Could we go for this? Stories. I love stories, and I'd love to get the stories behind the brands, behind some of the great entrepreneurs that started these whiskey brands that are still with us today. Some of these people, an amazing tranche of stories I'd like to get behind, but I'd also like to get behind the stories of the people that are working in the industry right now, as we are. And I think it'd be of interest to hear, some stories of the past, and as the world opens up, we can maybe be out there, join the stories. And this way I would like to approach it would be almost, I was thinking of an aeroplane, you take off, you land. I was almost thinking the highs and lows of working in the whiskey industry. What I would term the pot ale moments. Pot ale's pretty horrible stuff. It's usually spread as fertiliser. Now, taken away for biofuel. But the pot ale moments, which are not great, and then the middle cut moment, which is wonderful times.
Bellissimo.
Bellissimo. So could we start it ourselves, and then we'll get people on the following weeks working in the whiskey industry. Give us your pot ale moment, and I'll give you mine. And then we'll go to the happy bits.
Pot ale moment.
I'm having a
Yeah, I
drink.
mean, there's been a few moments. That
I know.
I think one of it was a while ago. It was probably about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, and I was in a masterclass, and I was enjoying myself. I wasn't particularly working. It was a sort of independent masterclass, and there was a lot of common friends there, and there was 4 whiskies, and I was working for a particular brand at that point, and I didn't manage to spot my own whiskey in 4 whiskies. It's actually remarkably easily done.
Yes.
Because if you're not, if you
it's
like
ludicrous.
everything in life, if you're not in that context, then you're not necessarily thinking about those sorts of things, and you just sort of. So there was that, and that's actually the more I'm interested when people go, I can spot a whiskey. I can tell you what distillery that is, and I'm like, not sure you can personally. I think there's some real ways of there's so much diversity out there. It's impossible to know everything. It's impossible to know all the maturations. It's just not. It just can't be that way. So that was quite a bit of a everybody in the class was like, no, good to see Gordon's on his brand. It was like, oh, sorry. So that was a bit of a funny pot ale moment. But yeah,
especially if you've been tasting all the time. I think my pot ale moments, and I can't wait to get more people on to discuss. It has to be travel. When you're traveling, and especially if you're not in the country, so I was in The Hague or Den Haag doing a masterclass on a Sunday, and the flight was quite tight. So I got back to the stands. The stand was, I think somebody said, could you look after it for a while? I'm not saying who it is, but not pointing any fingers at a lady called Claire Tesh, who was on a previous podcast. And I looked after the stand for 10, 15, 20. It got to 25 minutes, and I said, my plane is in just over an hour at Schiphol Airport. This is going to be tight. And I don't think I even waited. I just had to get out that, you'll know where it is, the big Der Kirk in Den Haag.
Yeah, Den Haag.
Yeah. No taxis, nothing. No bus. I thought, what do I do? I had my full suitcase, and I just had my phone in my hand. I said, I'm going to have to run it. So I just had to sort of run out. Have you ever seen the train spotting when you're running along the street? So I was running along the streets with my suitcase, sweating. I'm going to miss it. Finally, waved down a taxi in the middle of the street. Got into the taxi and said, I have got to get the train to the airport in 5 minutes. And to his credit, he ran a couple of red lights. He went through them very quickly. He got right up the pavement. I just gave him some cash, and I heard the whistle getting blown. And there's the doors of the train closing. And it sounds like I put my suitcase in to stop the door closing. And it just wasn't funny, Gordon. This is not funny. And I managed to get the doors open, get inside, and the doors closed. I got to the airport, and the blooming plane was 2 hours late. It's not fun when you think I'm going to get marooned in a foreign country. No,
it happens a lot. And actually, funny enough, I was just thinking the other day, Kenny MacDonald, who does a bit of work with Kenny,
he was there.
You're well.
Yes. Kenny,
of Dramore. If you
he was there.
Nice independent bottlings, go and see Kenny. Kenny's had, he's done a bit of work for us, and some of the stories he's come back with about missing flights and stuff like that. And it happens a lot. The amount of times I've had to stay in, I've had to stay in airport hotels overnight because of weather or delays or whatever. I think one of the funniest though was I was in Kentucky in 2010. I think it was 2010, might have been 2008. I'm not sure. I think it was 2010. And the Ryder Cup was on. It was right over the Bourbon Festival. And it was in Valhalla.
Yes.
I think that's the one the Europeans got beaten in. But I actually went, very, very luckily went on the Friday. Courtesy of Penderyn, actually, because... they were holding it the next time in the UK 2 years later. So Wales was. So Penderyn were there. So thank you to them for that. Enjoyed that. But I remember I was in the airport flying back to the UK. So I was flying from Louisville to New York, and then New York to London, and then back to Glasgow. And I'm sitting in the bar next to the gate, and I'd sort of checked in, everything was good, and I was watching the Ryder Cup like this. And I'd said to the lady at the sort of checkout desk, or the sort of, boarding desk, what time's the flight leave? And she goes, you need to be, I mean, we don't know, but it'll be around about, the flight will leave at 6. So I thought, well, if I'm there at 5:30, that'll be fine. And I was and I was literally, 30 yards away. And I was watching the Ryder Cup, and it was getting quite exciting. And I sort of sauntered back just before 5:30, and she went, "We've been calling you for 10 minutes. The plane's sitting out there." And I'm like, "Oh no, flight missed. Had to stay for 24 hours." All that sort of thing. Luckily, they rebooked it all for free, so that was very good of them. But yeah, that was another one. You're like, "Oh, really?"
Oh, I know. Traveling. So listen, let's brighten it up. A middle cut moment.
Yeah.
Just perfect. Just really, just everything worked.
If I'm honest, I think some of those when you what I'm really missing at the moment, and I think this is the people that we all work with. Yeah, and I'm not talking about our distributors, although they are brilliant, and we love them all, and but I mean when you go to a market. Yeah. All the people from other businesses, all the people from the whole whiskey sort of fraternity I'm missing. And that's the bit that I really do miss. And so that's a real middle cut moment for me. And people say to me, do you travel so much? And do you want to travel less? And well, yeah, I do, but I still would want to travel. I don't want to not see those people, do those events, get involved with them, because I love it. And I would have probably normally been in Canada 2 weeks ago, in Victoria, where they do a lovely whiskey festival every year. Obviously not happening, but such a great way of meeting so many great people. And we've done, so that's a big middle cut for me.
Yeah, that's I could go along with that as well, Gordon. There was a couple of things I was going to put in for my middle cut moment. I suppose it'd be 2018. Take you back to August when I rejoined the Edinburgh Festival. I love it. I became a love you again. I did the Edinburgh Festival about 9 times as a performer in the past. This was my 10th time, but under the guise of Ian MacLeod and Glengoyne. And it was a whiskey tasting, but it was a theatre show. And there was top hats, there was Victorian outfits, there was moustaches, there was projections in the wall. What there wasn't up until day one was an audience. And we weren't too sure how the audience would take a whiskey tasting with various costumes and props. And just as it grew from week 1 to week 2 to week 3, there was just such an appetite for folk to embrace a different way of tasting and enjoying whiskey, which is a wee bit more theatrical and bringing the stories to visual life as you sat and drank your whiskey. So that was a real couple of those nights were real middle cut moments, and going back home in the train back through to Glasgow with a big smile on the face, having done a couple of great shows that day. So that was a middle cut moment from the moment of the Den Haag taxi journey.
Absolutely. No, I mean there'll be lots more, and we'll ask all of our guests when they come on to do that. So yeah, no, absolutely. But yeah, it's been a long time since we've done a Whisky Unscripted. It's great to be back. It's good to see sauna, and we just wanted to ease back in gently, everybody, and just here we are back again. We'll have some great guests, and we are excited to be back podcasting. Correct.
That's the series 3 underway, Gordon, and as I say, lots of guests lined up. It's lovely to do it visually, to see you as well, and have a wee dram to boot and get a skirt on, which has been almost one of the perfect days.
And when are you going to be on TV with Joanna Lumley? Do you know?
Friend
of the show, Joanna Lumley. Friend of the show. And I believe her episode 1 of Joanna Lumley going round the United Kingdom starts tonight on British television. And it'll be England tonight. And the following Tuesday, which will be the 9th of February, UK time at 9:00 at night on ITV. It is. So if you're listening anywhere in the world, you can do all these fancy streaming. We're all desperate to see if Gordon Dallas makes the cut.
I did ask. The director phoned up a few weeks ago, and it was asking about some of the background to the smuggling ladies and have the images. And I did say to him, "Am I on the cutting room floor?" He said, "Not yet." So we never know. For anyone listening to the podcast, here's a little soup song to enjoy the program next Tuesday. they didn't, and from understanding, they said the distillery will get its mention. We'll mention distillery, but we don't want too much branding on the television. So we'll give the Glengoyne its full mention. But could you wear something else? Could you wear a jacket on top of what you're wearing? And I didn't bring one apart from a branded jacket. And the only jacket available was the lady that works in the shop who's 5'2", called Eloise. So I've got Eloise jacket on national television with the sleeves up halfway up my arm. I do look a little bit strange, so I'm not too sure if I will make the cut, Gordon. But nice to be in national television with a lady's jacket on, I feel.
No, absolutely. If you're going to do it properly. Well done. Correct. Fantastic.
Correct. Right. Okay, Gordon. Well,
pleasure.
Salute you. Here it is here. We'll salute you with our lovely Tamdhu Batch strength. And I had a little Cameron Bridge. You showed us the Rosebank and a lovely Glengoyne 18.
Yep. Thank you. Good to see you. And we're kicked off season 3. Cheers.
Anjaba!
Anjaba!